my question will be quite extensive. I'd say it's more like a comment on the first presentation in conjunction of not getting into technology too much. But I would like to get your opinion. In the first presentation, we saw this historical line which started, I'm glad Rokas is back. We saw a line getting from cows to shells and then gold and paper money and then electronic money. But the reason, let's say the historical reason why the gold became a medium of exchange, basically the scarcity was not the main reason. The main reason, that's one of the opinions of course, is that gold is practically useless because it's chemically, it has another properties. Like gold is impractical as a metal. You cannot do a weapon out of gold. You cannot eat gold. You cannot. It's scarce, so you don't use it to build stuff. But it's also chemically in inertia. It doesn't react much with like silver, like iron. It doesn't get rust and so on. So the only thing that you can build with gold was jewelry, like a long time ago, which has no practical reason. So then it became just confident to use it as a medium of exchange. But then when you go a few thousand years forward, and when we had gold standard pegged, the US dollar pegged to gold standard, it became impractical for economy. It stopped economy from evolving, and that's why the gold standard was, let's say, the attachment to US dollar was detached from the value of gold just for economic reasons, because the economy couldn't speed up, and then you couldn't print more. The actual value created by people was faster than money could be printed because there was not amount of gold. And when you see Bitcoin now, with its limit reaching 21 million in what, 6 years time from now?
No, it's well, the 21 million limit will be in 2140s, something like that, but 99% of Bitcoin will be like 20 years from now.
Yes, but so, because what I'm saying is that we are creating value, people are creating value faster than the amount of Bitcoin is generated. And every day we create more value. So therefore, the deflation effects may happen as they happened in 1970s. So from the technological standpoint, Bitcoin, I agree, is something like a good medium of exchange. It could, it's scarce, it's stable, but the fact that it's limited in its amounts may cause economical problems in the future. So, what's your comment on that? Could we maybe find some other thing which has all the properties of Bitcoin, but without the hard cap?
So, couple of reflection to this. Yeah. So I think for somebody to become money, first of all, they have to be, I would say, two conditions. First of all, people need to agree that it has value. It's like a religion. I mean, we need to agree that something has value, but it also needs to be a good form of money. So initially, people agreed that seashells had value, but it was like a bad choice because it was not scarce. Yeah, the reason why gold became money, first of all, people agreed that, okay, let's agree that gold will have value, but it also was suitable as a means of payment. Yeah, so there are two things that are needed now, and therefore it became money. Two reasons: people agreed, like a religion, but it was actually suitable, as a form of money. Now, moving to your second part, whether gold is good for economy, and then you are saying it was bad for economy because gold is deflationary and we need inflation. That is a view advocated by Keynesian economists. Let's say Austrian economists would disagree with you, and we could debate here, whether inflation is good or bad, but sort of, yes, many economists are using that argument that, gold is bad because we need inflationary, money. And, there are other schools of thought in economics, like Austrian economists. They would disagree with you, and they would blame a lot of, let's say, business cycles and problems that it's exactly because, let's say, we have this artificially printed money, therefore it's bad for the economy. So there is not like one, I would say, by economists, one single opinion whether inflation is good or bad. We could have a very long debate whether inflation is good or bad. You could say that, we had, periods in Europe where we were relying on gold and, it was beautiful. I mean, it was deflationary, but it was like sort of also, let's say, very good for economic development. And some people say, yes, the last 50 years, when we have, let's say, when we are out of gold standard, some people will say our economies grew, but the other people will say they grew despite that, we have, inflationary, monetary policies. Yeah, so it is a big debate. Now, but in theory, if you wanted, I mean, if you really thought that this Bitcoin's like hard cap is like a really, really big problem, and I mean, you had like 100% proof where everybody agreed that it is, super, super bad for economy, which many people disagree, and I actually disagree. In a way, you could create a coin, let's say a Bitcoin, whatever, fork, which would have 2% inflation per year. And that's it, right? I mean, you could do that if you wanted. I mean, if there was like absolute proof that this is somewhat much better for the economy. So in a way, I would say I would disagree with that economist's view, but I mean, there could be a solution with Bitcoin if you wanted. I mean, just make that whatever several. Now you have 12-point bitcoins per block that you are creating. Well, after 4 years it will be 6, then 3, then etc. etc. You can make it like this, create somehow artificially 1% inflation per year if you want.
We already have quite a few cryptocurrencies which don't have this hard cap. Monero is one of them. Ethereum is another of them. But Ethereum is not good for money. So, but there are a lot of. But still, yeah. Still, even if there are such another cryptocurrencies, it would be really hard to repeat Bitcoin success. I am now really big fan of one more technology which can make cryptocurrency really fungible, called Mimblewimble. It also was started as an anonymous white paper on the some Bitcoin ERC chats, and they were thinking how to make it into Bitcoin. It would be really hard, and they are now creating a couple of coins which will be Mimblewimble based blockchains. The problem is that you have to repeat network effect, wallets, accessibility of those coins. So how easy it's buy those coins. There are only 3 cryptocurrencies at the moment which you can buy on all major exchanges. It's a Bitcoin, Litecoin, or Ethereum. Yeah. Then general people knows Bitcoins. It's really hard to repeat that name. Really hard to repeat the name, yeah, and also hard to install new wallets for integrate all the software. Why, for example, Mimblewimble, if it will be integrated, implemented in Bitcoin, it will be side chain. They will not touch main chain because that would destroy all the infrastructure which is built around current technology. So I just think that even if somebody will try, and they tries to do such things as, okay, let's make the same Bitcoin, copy the code, but we will have no limit supply. First of all, nobody will buy their currency because prices will grow not that nicely because, it's not limited supply. That's why all tokens have limited supply just because of price, and price drives adoption as well. Another thing is that you can copy the code of blockchain of Bitcoin, but you're not able to copy network effect.
Yeah, I think like you said, that some economists think that inflationary systems are better, some economists think that deflationary systems are better, but I think everyone agrees that competition is good. And why don't we have a competition in currencies if competition is good? And for the most of the history of humanity, there was competition in currencies. It's only in very recent times, if we look at all history of humanity, that it's mandated by the government that you must use this one currency and that's it. And if you use anything else, you are a fraudster and a criminal. So if competition is good, then let's use inflationary currency and deflationary currency and maybe other type of currencies and let the market choose which one they want to use.
By the way, green, which is Mimble coin, they will have controlled inflation. Each block will produce 100 new coins always, never reduced. So maybe that's your currency. Maybe another question, because now we are discussing and we will allow you to take a mic later.
Pass it on later.
Okay, is it on? Another problem that I see is how do you distribute your money and tokens, let's say, because now Bitcoin is owned by, I don't know how many people in total. How many distinct people currently own any Bitcoin? Maybe millions? Or?
I think it's millions of people, but yes, there are quite a few whales, so to speak, which might own a lot of the currency. But I think that
okay, I'll just finish my question
then. What is the best way to initially distribute currency? And I think the best way is like Bitcoin has done it, that the more work you do to protect the system, to verify transactions, the more reward you get. And any other, I don't think it's really possible to do other sort of distribution in a completely decentralized way. And it's inevitable that, like always, the amount of wealth will be concentrated in the hands of a few. If you now took all wealth from every person in the world and give everyone equal amount, a year later the small minority will own most of the wealth again.
Maybe not a year, but...
Well, maybe not here, yeah, but it's inevitable that smarter people get more wealth, or those who are more in whatever system more have more skills to get that wealth. So it's impossible to prevent that, and I think there is no better method to initially distribute coins than by mining.
Yeah, I understand your reasoning, but well, if you want to increase adoption, then of course, if there were some talks about if Bitcoin would be equal to all the money in the world, then you need to, at some point, add government with all its positive and negatives. So I'm skeptical how can this be done. So.
Well, I don't think you need to put it, because I think it's really a good analogy to the internet. Because when the internet started to get popular, everyone was saying that if this gets bigger, you must involve government in it, or otherwise it won't work, because it never happened before without government involvement. But of course, it works without the government involvement, and same can be with Bitcoin or another cryptocurrency. And also, it was already done several times, like what you mentioned, for example, in Iceland. I forgot the name now, but they created like a national cryptocurrency. Not the government, but it's like a private idea. And they gave each and every one Icelander some amount, the same amount of that cryptocurrency. So most people ignored it, but those who didn't immediately sold it for Bitcoin, and the value crashed to zero, and it ended.
But again, I mean, this is a good question, right? I mean, so you can, you know, there are a couple of segments of people who are here. One are, you know, super anarchists who say, you know, fuck the government, fuck the banks, etc., etc. And then I would say much more rational is that, hey, look, I mean, with this Bitcoin, is like we will more or less move back to the gold standard. Yeah. So we also had a situation where gold was money, and we had governments, we had taxes. There was just, you know, one thing that government could not, you know, produce money, you know, as they want, right? For them to get a budget was through taxes. Yeah. Now, because in a way, I mean, the problem is, I mean, we can, you know, the government can get money via taxes or also, you know, by printing money. And if they abuse that power, printing money, basically they're taking, you know, all the savings away, you know, from the citizens. So what we are saying is that, let's say, all the rational Bitcoiners say, hey, let's maybe move back to the situation where more or less we had this, you know, gold standard where the government cannot, you know, create money, but there will be a government, yeah? There will be commercial banks. There won't be a central bank because we don't need him anymore, but, you know, government, there will be taxes, there will be, you know, commercial banks actually. They will probably be running all the lightning nodes, etc., etc. So this is more or less, you can imagine still like a world with the government and just, you know, like, you know, we would be using gold as money, just digital gold, which is Bitcoin.
And actually, if all the transactions happened in cryptocurrency, let's say in Bitcoin, it would be much easier to prevent tax evasion. And for example, with VAT tax, you could make a law, for example, that every company which accepts transactions have to give their addresses to the government in advance, and then basically each of that, to say it in simplified way, each of those addresses has to be programmed in such a way that when it receives a transaction, the required amount of VAT automatically gets forwarded to the government. So you would not need to collect taxes after the fact. You would literally collect them in real time, and then it would be like a dream for economists because you could see the all economic activity in the country literally in real time, and even like and various regulations could be tied into that activity. I'm meaning to say that you could base it on some mathematical formula and not on decisions of a few people. So yes, this technology, even Bitcoin as it is now with the Lightning Network especially, it would be great to prevent tax evasion, would be great to monitor all the transactions and all the economic activity in the country. So it would be a huge benefit for the governments. They would collect more taxes, they would see more what happens in the country, and they could react and enact regulations more efficiently and more predictably. Well, I agree on that, and yeah, so like I mentioned, that one of the biggest problem of Bitcoin is complete lack of anonymity, complete lack of privacy.
Like if government can control everything what's happening in the network, basically.
Well, they can't control it,
you're
but they
losing,
can see everything.
Yeah, they can see.
Actually, with those developments around fungibility, there are mathematical schemes which have to be verified, approved, rechecked, but still where you can. A transaction is anonymous, but you can show it and prove and show for somebody what was in that transaction. So actually, even if you would have quite good fungible private money, companies still could show, like they now should show their balances, how they're accepting money. So not a private would be eligible, like would have to show for government all their incomes, but companies would have to register their accounts and stuff like that. Still, I think that people would try to save on taxes, but at least to automate that or make it easier or more effective, with programmable money, it's easier. I actually, with now banking system, current banking system for government, it's even easier than with blockchain to take all the money, as you explained. Like if it's a taxable money, why they are not getting from bank it directly?
Take it after the fact, not in real time.
Yeah, but technologically they could do that now, because most of transactions are already through banks. So they could already charge you at each transaction. It's just not that easy to know is it taxable transaction or not.
Yeah, but also I think now there are lots of different systems. That's why it's also will be hard to interoperability. Yeah, and then the transactions which happen with cash, with like coins and paper. So you could not do it for those.
But you know, like even I don't believe that Bitcoin, like I don't know how many years we have to survive for Bitcoin to become a national currency. Maybe in Venezuela, but it's still like there is a big incentive for now for governments to have their currencies because they can print new money. But even if they would have national currency, still until we will have all the transactions avoided, like paper, it would take a lot of time. And even with Bitcoins, we have those hardware wallets which are, when I can give to you my part of Bitcoin, and you're not able to track that easily, those transactions. And Lightning Network transactions, you're not able to track. We don't know how many Lightning Network transactions there are, actually. Because there may be some transactions in some payment channels which are not watched for now. So I think that in current system, to charge such taxes is easier than in blockchain.
I have another question.
Yes.
Is there something is done to reduce the energy consumption to support the Bitcoin network?
No, and it shouldn't be done.
Why?
Because, well, first of all, I think the number which is being reported as being used by the Bitcoin network is like several dozen times too high than it actually is. And it's like a meme basically now, because I saw at least 5 different articles which had the title Bitcoin network uses more the electricity than, and then a country name, and there are 5 different articles with 5 different country names. So and why it should not be reduced, because just like, for example, for a national currency, you could say that the value, or at least the trustworthiness of that currency is basically tied to the military power of that country. If, for example, the military of the United States was completely destroyed tomorrow, the value of the dollar probably would drop to 0. And the military of cryptocurrencies is the amount of electricity used. So that power is not wasted in any way. It's used to secure the network, because if you would want to make a 51% attack, you would not only need like the billions or hundreds of millions worth of ASICs, but you would also need lots and lots of electricity. And the higher amount of electricity you need to attack the network, the more secure that network is. And that's why the more electricity Bitcoin uses, or any cryptocurrency, the more secure it is.
Yeah, but let's say after 10 years, what's gonna happen? We're gonna increase the energy consumptions like 100%, 200%, 500%.
I'm not sure what will happen, but also there's this, well, also in reality, Bitcoin mining is really pushing the green electricity forward. Because what happens is mostly two things for big mining farms. They either build their own electric station, wind, solar, or etc., or they purchase electricity from existing electric stations at the moments where it's, well, opposite of peak, like electricity is produced, and when there is less people consuming it. There are times when, well, for example in Germany, when power stations pay people to use electricity because they don't have where to put it. And that's also the problem which mining farms help solve. So in both of those cases, the mining community is really pushing the innovation and spread of green and renewable energy sources. So I think that's good thing.
Burn green dollar bills.
Sorry?
You burn green dollar bills to get green electricity.
So I have a question about that ecological aspect. So does Lightning Network helps to reduce it, or it's just the same?
It helps to reduce the amount of electricity which is needed on average for one transaction, basically. It does not reduce the amount of energy which the network uses, but now the network uses X amount of electricity and it can process 7 transactions per second. With Lightning Network, it will use the same X amount of electricity, but will be able to process 1 million transactions per second. So one transaction will need much less electricity on average. And also, like I mentioned, the electricity is used for security. You could have like free computers mining, which would use 1 kilowatt of power, and the network would work exactly the same, would process exactly the same amount of transactions per second, but would be much less secure. So the only reason electricity is needed is to improve security. And for a Lightning Network to exist, it still needs this backbone of the blockchain, which is really, really secure. And yeah, so I don't know, does that answer your question?
Yes, same hash rate, but Lightning is working.
Yeah.
So as we are talking about electricity in China, is a cheap electricity, and China has the most, I guess, power of hashing power. Do you see it as a threat that China is like has more like the most hashing power?
By my recent,
I guess more than 51.
by my recent knowledge, China is the biggest miner in the world. So, according to last calculations of mining pools and players, even big Chinese miners maybe mined like mining pools controlled by, or mining farms controlled by some Chinese people, but they already are mining not only in China, because in China they have trouble. So China is not. Yeah, that was true what you're talking about a year ago. But really a lot of changed. And really a lot of mining moved to Russia. About 6% of mining is in Russia. Quite a lot of moved to Canada and United States. Surprisingly, why in Africa they mine, I don't know and how, but they have quite big mining farms in Africa. And surprisingly, quite a lot of mining, especially Chinese, are moving now to Kyrgyzstan and those countries because there are very cheap electricity somehow, so they're making deals. So China is not anymore the main mining, like electricity provider for Bitcoin blockchain. As I mentioned in my presentation, that in terms of decentralization, yes, it's still not ideal situation, because we would like to see more mining pools and less centralization. Bitmain has too much power at the moment, but still that's the best decentralization among any other blockchains. And what I see, and like what is our hope, that it will become better and better, because more people are producing hardware, more people looks to Bitcoin as a long-term investment. So this decentralization, it's naturally becoming decentralization of mining.
And also, like you mentioned, with SegWit 2x, it was supported by about 85% of miners. And a lot of the largest companies in the Bitcoin space, and it still failed because the community and the developers were against it. So it showed in practice that actually having even 85% of mining power, you can't really do that much. And so I think, and basically what you could do, even if you tried to be dishonest, you could not steal anyone's money. You could not, what basically you could do, you could censor transactions and disrupt the network by not processing any transactions at all. That's it. You could do a very expensive DDoS attack. And then you would lose all your investment yourself. And so it's financially much more rational to just be honest and to mine and to receive the mining reward.
So theoretically, like 1 year ago when there was 70% of mining power in China, was it possible to fake transactions?
Fake? No.
Not fake. A little bit censorships, but faking transactions is not possible even with having 100%. You're not able to fake transactions. You're able not to accept some transactions. You're able to change consensus rules, but people can say that this your new blockchain, it's a fork, and you still have like 5% of mining, and still you would say that Bitcoin has less hash power now, but this is Bitcoin, and that is not Bitcoin. So users can decide what is Bitcoin. You're not able to fake. You can like somehow control new features, but still if people don't like those features, they can say it's not a Bitcoin and they can move. So that's it's because everything is public on Bitcoin blockchain. If you try to fake transactions, everyone sees that and not accepts to full nodes. It's just automatically rejected. That's a right to create a block. What is mining? It's a right, possibility to create new block and decide which transactions will be in that block. So what actually mining, a big mining pool can do, and already one mining pool tries to do. For example, they decided not to accept SegWit transactions into their blocks. So if /pool is mining block, only old type of transactions are there. SegWit transactions are not accepted. And slash, not slash, or which one?
One of the via BTC or something.
Okay, there is one mining pool. Sorry, I don't remember which one. But that's mostly the biggest thing they can do. Even if they would have 100% of mining, because all full nodes also participating in consensus, because they will not accept, if you as a miner will create a block which will not be valid block by consensus rules, my full node will reject it. What is, yes, you don't understand correctly what is mining, but we have now we have go out of here because this place is closing, but we can move this discussion out of this stage and just peer-to-peer. I can try to explain how mining works, because maybe the misunderstood is in understanding how they works and what they control. Thank you very much for everyone, and I hope we will have more Bitcoin meetups in the future.